17 against federal judges, and the remainder against state court judges and threats that they have received. And as you know, federally, there's a specific statute which prohibits that. So we are working up those cases and referring them to prosecution where we can meet the threshold for evidence.
In your written testimony, you referenced how Counter-UAS legislation expires and we need to resolve the conflict in jurisdiction and authority. I agree, this is an urgent concern. I have heard from state and local law enforcement about it, from the folks responsible for major events, whether it's sports or concerts or public events. Given the tragic increase in political violence, I'm very concerned about the misuse of drones and the potential of there being a catastrophic event. What could we do to address this challenge?
Well, obviously, reauthorizing the capabilities that we have under the Counter-UAS program. But just to highlight what the FBI is specifically doing, we've been given the mandate to work with DHS to secure not just the Club World Cup that we had, by the way, which occurred in 32 matches across the country without any significant incident, which we're proud of, and we're taking that model for the next World Cup and also the Olympics. But the reason I bring that up is because we pushed out our Counter-UAS programs to address the security needs, and that's where our focus is on events like that.
Mr. Director, thank you for your testimony. I look forward to working on actually solving criminal problems and reducing the extent to which what we're going back and forth about is more political and partisan point scoring and more actually solving crimes for the American people.
Yes, sir.
Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Director, you and the FBI working with state and local law enforcement officials in Utah have caught the assassin of Mr. Charlie Kirk. Is that right?
We have a suspect, yes, sir.
And you did that within 48 hours, did you not?
33 hours.
33 hours. Congratulations. We've had other political assassinations. Back in June, an assassin assassinated Representative Melissa Hoffman, Mr. Hoffman, Senator John Hoffman, and Mrs. Hoffman in Minnesota. You and the FBI and Minnesota state and local law enforcement officials caught the assassin within 48 hours, did you not?
I believe that timeline's correct, Senator.
Congratulations. Sometimes we miss the forest for the trees. Good work. Did Mr. Kirk's assassin act alone?
As I've said since the beginning, Senator, it is very much an ongoing investigation, and I can't speak to the state charges. That's for the state to address on their own, but we are providing them with the same investigatory findings reporting the department. And as I noted to Senator, I believe it was Cornyn or Hawley, that there are a number of individuals that are currently being investigated and interrogated, and a number yet to be investigated and interrogated specific to that chat room. So we are very much in our ongoing posture of investigation.
So others could have been involved?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I asked you this last time you were here. Kash, you remember Mr. Peter Strzok and Ms. Lisa Page?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Strzok was an FBI agent. Ms. Page was an FBI lawyer. They were both very aggressive anti-Trump political activists who allowed their political opinions to affect their work at the FBI. Is that a fair statement?
I believe their text messages and their testimony that was secured by the OIG and DOJ speak for themselves.
In fact, Mr. Strzok and Ms. Page were having an extramarital affair, and at one point, Ms. Page texted Mr. Strzok, quote, "Trump's not ever going to be president, right? Right?" And Mr. Strzok replied, "No, he won't. We will stop it," end quote. Ms. Page resigned from the FBI. Mr. Strzok was fired. They promptly sued the federal government and the FBI and Justice Department for releasing their emails, which revealed all of this. The FBI settled that lawsuit for $1.2 million, gave Mr. Strzok $1.2 million cash, gave Ms. Page, who resigned. She wasn't fired, she resigned, she quit. Gave her $800,000. Who, if the FBI made that decision to give them money?
That settlement was reached in the Biden administration when my predecessor was the director.
Who? Are you saying that Chris Wray did?
The only people that can decide that settlement are the Attorney General in conjunction with the director and the administration.
Okay, so you're telling me that Attorney General Garland and Director Wray decided to give them the money? Is
Yes,
that
sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you took over the FBI, did you find instances of where under the Biden administration, the FBI had weaponized the agency to push the political beliefs of President Biden?
Sorry, the last part.
When you took over the FBI, did you find instances of where the Biden administration had politicized the FBI to prosecute its political agenda?
Well, I won't speak for other people. Haven't been a target of that weaponization, haven't been a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, having had the Justice Department weaponized against me for making the findings and leading the investigation of Russiagate. I know what that feels like. And that's why, as the FBI director, I'm committing to not ever have that ever happen again. But I'm also committed to fully investigating what was done. And that matter is still ongoing.
So I assume, I take it your answer is yes.
Yes, sir.
And you're firing those people, is that right?
Anyone that politicizes their job at the FBI will not work at the FBI.
Okay. You've heard some of my colleagues either implicitly or otherwise suggest that you have politicized the FBI to prosecute the political beliefs of President Trump. Is that true?
I don't know how that can be true when the stats that I cited, to include the 23,000 arrests, 6,000 weapons seized, 1,600 gang and criminal enterprise organizations, 4,700 children found and rescued, more enough fentanyl seized to kill a third of America. The men and women of the FBI are now on an apolitical mission, and this is why the numbers are historic.
Have you fired people because they voted for Vice President Harris?
I don't ask people who they vote for, and neither does the FBI.
Okay. But you've given people polygraphs, have you not?
Many people in the FBI take polys.
The FBI does that all the time.
Yes, sir.
Does it not?
Yes,
For
sir.
a long time, is that correct?
Decades.
All right. I want to ask you about the Epstein files. Have you seen the Epstein files?
I have not reviewed the entirety of it myself, but a good amount.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Epstein trafficked young women, including, in some instances, minors, for sex to himself?
That was specifically the allegations in the 2018 indictment in the Southern District of New York.
Okay. Who else did he traffic these young women to?
In terms of what the investigation, again, going back to 2008, Mr. Acosta, who limited the investigation and limited the search warrants and limited the parameters of the investigation, the only thing we are able to speak to publicly, because he was given a non-prosecution agreement by Mr. Acosta, is that first time period from, I believe, don't quote me on this, 97 to 2001-ish. And then when the Trump administration courageously reopened it.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm going to run out of time. You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
for the information that we have
in the files.
in the case file.
Okay. Now, President Trump has deferred to the FBI and the Department of Justice with respect to the Epstein records. He says it is your call about releasing them. And I understand that the department and the agency have decided to release them in cooperation with the House committee. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you're releasing them a little bit at a time. Is that correct?
We're releasing as much as we can, but we are limited by 3 different court orders, and the department went back to each of those judges to waive those court orders or have them lifted, and each of those judges declined.
Will you release all of them, or at least as many as you can?
We will release everything we are legally permitted to do so. We are continuing to work with the House on the subpoena request. We have substantially complied with it, but we will continue to release whatever we are legally permitted to do so.
Okay. I strongly encourage you to do that. Cash, this issue's not going to go away. And I think the essential question for the American people is this. They know that Epstein trafficked young women for sex to himself. They want to know who, if anyone else, he trafficked these young women to. And that's a very fair question. I want to know that answer. And I think you're going to have to do more to satisfy the American people's understandable curiosity in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, may I just respond to that? I agree, Senator. And what we have done, and just to remind folks, the Epstein case files existed in the 2 prior administrations, in the Obama administration and the Biden administration, and they didn't release anything. And there was President Trump in the first administration that renewed charges against Mr. Epstein. And I know it's a little complicated to understand, but what exists in the Epstein case files was a direct result of the limited search warrants from 2006 and 7, which hamstrung future investigations because of the non-prosecution agreement. And multiple administrations had the opportunity to look at the entirety of that case file and recommend prosecutions against anyone that was trafficked under Mr. Epstein and anyone that participated in that trafficking. And the only person to bring charges was the prior administration against Mr. Epstein. Now, I am not saying that others were not trafficked and others were not involved. What I am telling you is that based on the information we have, and we have continuously and publicly asked for the public to come forward with more information. If there is, we'll look at it. But based on credible information, we have released all credible information, and the information that the Department of Justice and the FBI never releases is information on investigations that are not credible. And we don't release the names of victims who weren't credible, but in the same time, we don't release the names of victims who were credible. And so that's by law. And so the information we are releasing now is historic, and it is also to the maximum capacity that the law allows. And I know that's not going to satisfy many, many, many people. But if they wanted it done right, then the investigation from its origination should have been done right, and he should not have been given a get-out-of-jail-free card to do jail on the weekends for 12 hours a day, and he should have been investigated fully for the entirety of his crime and criminal enterprise, not just from 1997 to 2001.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Mr.
Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, thank you for being here today. You'll recall well in January at your confirmation hearing before this committee, I raised the prospect of politically motivated retaliation, and you promised me, as you did other members of this committee, quote, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard and no one will be terminated for case assignments. You went on to tell me, quote, all FBI employees will be protected against political retribution. And you assured one of my colleagues that you would honor the internal review process of the FBI. I'm not going to mince words. You lied to us. In the short time that you've been FBI director, you've presided over a rash of retaliatory firings. 3 FBI agents have recently sued you. They are FBI agents with 60 years between them of distinguished service, rescuing hostages, saving kids from predators, dismantling drug cartels, and their allegations, their civil allegations, are a searing indictment of your tenure as FBI director. But it's not just those three. The FBI Agents Association has said that your actions, quote, distract agents from their work, foster fear that their assignments could cost them their careers, either now or under the next administration, and increase the risk of criminal and national security threats by undermining unity and morale within the Bureau, end quote. This association, as you know, is voluntary. It represents 14,000 members, 90% of all the active agents. These are your employees saying that your performance has been unqualified and unfit. And there is mounting evidence that these retaliatory firings were the result of direction from the White House. There have been instances in the past history of the Bureau of political interference and political direction from the director's office, but not the kind of institutional interference that we're seeing from the White House right now. I'm going to ask you, has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
I completely disagree with your entire premise that I have lied or am misleading the FBI. If I were, the results that I announced today by the men and women of the FBI and the historic records we are doing to keep this country safe would not be possible. The men and women of the FBI are responding to our leadership and this administration's priorities. The only way people get terminated at the FBI is if they fail to meet the muster of the job and their duties. And that is where I will leave it. And you accusing me of lying is something I don't take lightly, but I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you.
Well, let me just ask you to answer my question. Has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
Generally speaking, we always discuss with the White House, OMB, during the budget process, how many personnel we need, who we need where,
Answer is yes.
for
Have
budgetary
you been
purposes
directed
and
to
real.
fire people, agents, because they participated in investigations of the president?
I don't receive directions to do that.
Has anyone
I make the
suggested it?
decisions.
Has anyone asked you to do it? The best information is, yes, you've taken suggestions and direction from the White House in firing qualified agents.
Any termination at the FBI was a decision that I made based on the evidence that I have as a director of the FBI, and it's my job, and I'm not going to shy away from it. And as you stated, those are allegations, and that is an ongoing litigation. So they'll have their day in court, so will we.
The allegations are not just in that lawsuit, Director Patel, and I think your testimony confirms that, in fact, you've taken direction from the White House
I don't.
in
it
those
does not.
retaliatory firings.
It literally
Because
does
you've
not.
acknowledged that, in fact, they have been in contact with you about personnel decisions.
The
Let me-
White
let me
House
move
has
on.
been, do not put words in my mouth, we're on the record. The White House, like any administration, contacts its agencies on the budgeting process and where it needs personnel and where the mission priorities are. That always happens. If they didn't do that, they would be abdicating the responsibility to law enforcement. I will always work with my partners in the chain of command at the Department of Justice and the White House to ensure that this FBI is delivering the results we are delivering, to include the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history, to include the most fentanyl seizures in modern U.S. history, to include the most lives saved and the most children found in
Just
modern
asked
U.S.
you,
history. That is a working FBI. That is not a failing FBI.
Let's move on to a related area. In White House discussions, have you been asked or directed by the White House or others to engage in a crackdown on political groups or organizations, nonprofits, after the murder of Charlie Kirk?
To direct at political organizations? No. I've been asked by my chain of command to properly root out criminal activity wherever it is in whatever investigation we are conducting, and that's what we're doing.
Have those distinctions about whom you're going to target been based on direction from the White House?
Nobody gives me a list on who to target. My targeting list is from the men and women at the FBI.
Have you talked about investigating certain groups, nonprofits, or foundations or institutions?
Whatever those investigations are, they're ongoing, and I'm not going to get into those.
Have you used polygraphs to determine loyalty of agents?
No.
Have you committed that you will respect the First Amendment rights of agents?
I have wildly committed to respecting the First Amendment rights of agents, but at the FBI, you have to balance your First Amendment rights with your mission.
Have you imposed any sort of loyalty test in the course of using polygraphs or in any of the other personnel decisions?
Polygraphs have been utilized at the FBI for decades. They will continue to be utilized in the fashion by the professionals that administer them.
Have you asked under the polygraph test about individuals' loyalty or about their voting records or any kind of past statement?
Just to make it abundantly clear, I don't tell the professionals how to conduct polygraphs or what questions to ask. They make those decisions. And I, as the director of the FBI, never ask anyone who they voted for.
Have you investigated donors to a political party simply because they are donors?
Simply based on that fact alone, no.
Have you investigated donors for another reason?
Many donors may be involved in criminal enterprises and criminal activities, and those individuals will be investigated.
Can you commit to make public the Epstein files that so far have not been released if this committee is able to review them on a classified basis?
I think this is an important distinction. The Epstein case file is not classified, to my understanding. So we are providing what we legally can, and we are going to give Congress what we are legally permitted to do so to the maximum extent of the law.
Will you enable the chairman and the ranking member to review them on a classified basis?
That doesn't make any sense. If the material in the Epstein file is not classified, there is no basis for a
Well, it would
classified review.
protect the confidentiality of them if they were able to review them on a classified basis.
If anyone in this room can get the multiple district court judges to lift their court protective orders in the ceilings, we will happily provide you with more information.
Are you in favor of merging the DEA and the ATF?
That's not something for me to comment on.
Well, those agencies work with you, don't they?
With me, not for me.
Are you in favor of orienting the FBI toward a national police function as opposed to the enforcement of federal law?
The FBI does enforce federal law across the country. That's what we do.
But isn't it a fact that you have told the leadership of the FBI that you view it as moving toward a local and state police function?
No, we are prioritizing working with our local and state partners, and they will tell you that that has never happened with this much engagement in the history that they have been serving as local law enforcement officers. I believe local cops are the best intelligence source and the best understanding of their communities, and I folded in my FBI agents under that direction to work with them to get the job done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For the fourth time today, I want to remind people that my oversight has made clear that Director Ray's FBI was politicized. I've released a trove of records to prove it, not only today, but in past days. I've also said some FBI personnel who have been fired, retaliated against my whistleblowers, and I don't remember my Democratic colleagues defending my whistleblowers when their careers were ruined. Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into the thrust of my comments and questions, Director, I want to thank you in our meetings prior to your confirmation, during your confirmation, we talked about your desire to get more agents out into the field, out of Washington, and take on violent crime. And you fulfilled that. St. Louis received the largest permanent per capita infusion of FBI agents anywhere in the country. And I know it's not only an isolated event, but we certainly appreciate your honoring your commitment to do that. And I know there's a lot of great opportunities ahead to take on violent crime, which you've highlighted many of the successes in your introductory comments. It's obviously no secret that this hearing takes place in the wake of a horrific American tragedy, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. For those of us who knew him, I know you did too. It's still sort of difficult to put into words what a tragic loss that is, not just for his family, but for our country, for free speech, for a belief that we can have a free exchange of ideas. And he was quite literally shot in the throat in an attempt to silence him and take his life. And so you have this task now of this investigation. There's been an arrest. But I think that we face an even larger crisis that law enforcement alone can't tackle alone. It's a crisis that is culminated in the assassination of Charlie. But it doesn't end there. It's I think every bit present right now, and the challenge is greater than quite frankly, I would have imagined. Seeing some of the comments that have taken place after the assassination, and something that I think as a country we have to reckon with. And it's something deeper, much deeper than a rejection of law and order or the norms of civil society. We've entered a very dangerous time, I think, in our country. And that should be clear to everyone. Political violence is a sign of a deep and corrosive sickness in any society. But in America today, the problem is just not political violence in the abstract. It is the specific kind of political violence which is overwhelmingly driven by a specific set of actors and groups. None of this emerged out of thin air. Over the past week, leaders from across the political spectrum have come out and forcefully condemned Charlie's murder and political violence more broadly. For that, we're all very grateful. We should be grateful. There have been calls to unite and come together in the wake of Charlie's murder, and I want to do that. I do. Someday I pray that we can be united as a country again and go forward together as a one people and under one flag, but we are not united. Upstream from the dehumanization and demonizing political violence and rhetoric tearing apart our country is a divide on how we view America and Americans. Is America good? Is America evil? Is there something inherently special about Western civilization, or is this 2,000-year project rotten to the core? And if it is something worth fighting for, which I believe, how do we do it? With words and ideas like Charlie did, or with firebombs and assassins' bullets? Political violence is always wrong. Period, full stop. It doesn't matter which side, in the name of any ideology or cause, it's wrong. But in America today, political violence is not a problem that falls equally upon both sides. We have to be honest about this. We must reject an attempt to paint it as some kind of random phenomenon with no particular creed or ideology, a kind of spontaneous insanity, which takes place outside of any broader social context and has no pattern at all. That's wrong. So free speech, yes. Political violence, no. But we have to be honest about what's happening. Already, we're hearing people talk about Charlie's assassination in those terms. We're told that we can't possibly know what drove a killer to plan and carry out a murder of the most prominent conservative activist in America. But that's a lie. We do know. The facts are plain and clear, and we have to speak truth in this moment, or there's no other side of the mountain. The vast majority of Americans are against political violence, but there is a vocal, active minority that encourages and celebrates it, and that minority is overwhelmingly on the left. Just last week, a YouGov poll found that a full 25% of those people who describe themselves as very liberal say it can be justified for citizens to use violence to achieve political goals. Less than 3% of very conservative Americans say the same. That's too many. That is 3% too many. But we are lying if we think that this is a both sides thing. It's not. We have to confront it. And you're going to have an important job of rooting out these terrorists. This is an ideology that runs very deep. The numbers are virtually identical to the ones I just noted when it comes to whether or not it's okay to celebrate the deaths of people whom we disagree with. And while large majorities in both parties were opposed to celebrating political violence, Democrats overall were nearly twice as likely as Republicans to believe that it is usually or always acceptable to celebrate the death of a public figure they oppose. What in the hell is going on? Earlier this year, a poll found that more than 55% of people on the left believed that it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Donald Trump. These are not just some abstractions on a page. These are our fellow citizens. How can we come together with people who believe these things? We've all seen the flood of posts on social media over the past week, not just a fringe few, but thousands upon thousands of people gleefully celebrating a father of two young children getting gunned down in broad daylight. I wish I wouldn't have seen that video. I wish my kids would not have seen that video. Blue Sky, the left-wing alternative to X, was so overwhelmed with these posts that the platform was forced to issue a statement warning its users to stop glorifying the murder. And it wasn't just random social media trolls. It was journalists, elite college professors, and even politicians, all but saying